All right, so this is our second video for World War One. Today's folks going to be kind of talking about some of the main battles of the war, and then some of the parts of the war that takes place in the Middle East with the Ottoman Turks out there. Okay, so we really don't talk about that part a ton. So there's two really important things that happen over there we're going to highlight. But before that, the battles. Okay, so I just kind of run through these pretty quickly. We're not going to talk about all the little details of each battle. Just kind of show you like why some of these are important. All right, so the first one is kind of the first main battle of World War One, the first battle of the Marne. Okay, so takes place near the German-French border. But the whole point of this proves that the Schlieffen Plan was not going to work. So if you remembered when we talked about that militarism and building up of armies, okay, the Schlieffen Plan was Germany's plan that if war broke out, that it did not want to fight a war on two fronts, so it'd go and quickly knock France out before Russia was ready. Well, in the Battle of the Marne, troops end up digging in trenches and kind of holding firm on their ground. And because of the newer technology, they're not able to overtake the other trenches as easily as they had anticipated. And this kind of shows that, oh, this thing's probably going to drag on. So that is the importance of the Battle of the Marne, okay? Because it's going to drag on, they can't knock France out quickly, and the Schlieffen Plan is pointless. All right, next up would be the Battle of Gallipoli, okay? So a few months after that, early the following year. So this is an attempt to try to knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war, okay? So Gallipoli was a peninsula near the Mediterranean that would have connected the Mediterranean to Russia. So they try to go and take that as an amphibious invasion where you invade from sea to land, which we had talked about someone Napoleon and why he didn't invade Britain because of how difficult it is. And we thought it would have been an easy victory. It turns out it is not. Okay, we lose at the Battle of Gallipoli. One group though that kind of gets highlighted at this battle are the Anzac troops, because Australia and New Zealand were colonies for Great Britain. They pulled soldiers from those colonies as well as India, but not for this battle, to come help fight for them. So Anzac is Australian and New Zealand Allied command. So those were troops fighting on the British behalf. This is kind of their big highlight of the war. To switch though to a naval battle, all right, this the Battle of Jutland, okay, in 1916. This deals with the British response to the German U-boats by setting a blockade around Germany's border. Germany, though, the reason that the British had done that is because Germany declared all the waters around Great Britain to be submarine war zone. So the whole Germany, though, is struggling with this blockade and decides they've got to deal some kind of blow to the British Navy so they can break through this blockade and open themselves up to receive more reinforcements. And the whole point was they were going to try to lure the British Navy into a trap, split it into half so they could focus on fighting one half. They knew they couldn't take the whole thing on together. And in the nick of time, one of the naval commanders realizes what's happening and changes course and arrives to offer reinforcements just in time and kind of helps save the war, at least from a naval perspective, for the British. But that is the largest naval battle of the war. After that, Germany's going to kind of leave its navy at port. They realize that they're really not going to be able to face off against the British anymore, so there's no point in hurting their navy. Then later that same year, you got the Battle of Verdun. So Verdun was a French city. It was semi-strategic, but what Germany's wanting to do here is they're not worried about winning and taking over Verdun. They thought, though, that if they attacked the city, they would be able to try to bleed out the French army. Okay, so they're going to bombard the city, force the French to defend it, and they're going to be at an advantageous position where they're not going to suffer too many casualties, but the French will be very vulnerable. Eventually, though, they get a little eager. Okay, that hubris kicks in, and they realize, hey, we're bleeding out the French army. We might actually be able to win and take over this city. So they then shift their focus to trying to invade the city. What that does, though, is it then exposes themselves, make their soldiers vulnerable, and they suffer nearly the same large losses that the French did. Okay, so it just turns out to be a wasted effort, not worth the expense for either side. Then the first battle of the Somme. Okay, this battle is famous for it's the first battle where the tank is introduced. Also, if you go through the pictures on your notes, you see a giant crater. So during the battle, the British Army had hired a group of engineers to dig a tunnel underground to the opposing side and stick some explosives underneath and blow a huge crater into the opposing territory. Now, why they didn't do that more often, I don't know. Maybe it's too difficult, too expensive. Maybe it didn't have quite the effect they wanted. I'm not sure. Um, it shows that it really wasn't that helpful because in over the course of about 5 months, okay, 7 total miles of territory had been gained. All right, 5 months of fighting, that's all they gained was 7 miles when you're considering trying to conquer an entire continent. It's also one of the deadliest battles of the war, suffering 1.7 million casualties between the British, French, and Germans. Okay, so that's the first battle of the Somme. Now, all this is going on, the United States was still trying to maintain neutrality. Okay, we still did not want to get involved in World War One. We thought it was their problem over there in Europe. We've got the Atlantic Ocean protecting us. But there's three things that the Germans do that end up ticking us off and leading us to end up joining the war. Okay, so the first starts in 1915 with the sinking of the Lusitania. Now, the Lusitania was a British passenger ship. Think of it as kind of like a smaller version of the Titanic, kind of what we would today consider a cruise ship. Okay, so there are people from Britain and a few Americans on board who were trying to cross the Atlantic. Well, a German U-boat goes to sink the Lusitania. Now, the reason it does that is it claimed because of how low in the water the ship was sitting that it was a lot heavier than it should be, and that therefore there must have been in the bottom full of weapons and ammunition that the Americans were secretly smuggling to the British. They had no way of proving that, but that is why they sink the ship. Well, in the process, they kill hundreds of British citizens, but they also kill 128 Americans. Now, these were not soldiers, these were regular citizens like us. The United States thinks that's a really terrible thing. It makes the British look bad to the whole world. Ironically, okay, they had since gone down and looked at the wreckage of the ship, and we even admitted, yes, we were smuggling weapons to the British without being declared a side in the war. Okay, so if you're going to claim neutrality and other countries not attack you, you can't be helping out one side, but that's what we were secretly doing. All right, so that is the sinking of the Lusitania. A year later, a German U-boat sinks another passenger ship. This one was a French one called the Sussex. All right, after they've now sunk two passenger ships, they realize there's a lot more of the world that is against them, even outside of warfare. So Germany promises to stop using the U-boats because they're afraid that this might force the United States to join the war. At first, it really didn't look like there was a good or a bad guy. Now the Germans are starting to look like the bad guy. So this is the Sussex Pledge. Okay, Germany's promise to stop using U-boats. Problem is that about a year after that, Germany breaks the Sussex Pledge and they start using the U-boats again. All right, and that's why the United States gets mad at them. Okay, because they had already killed American citizens. They had sank another passenger ship, and so they promised to stop using it, and then they go and resort back to doing it again. But the straw that breaks the camel's back is the Zimmermann note. Okay, so in 1917, you've got Arthur Zimmermann. He's the German ambassador to Mexico. Okay, so he's in Mexico from Germany, representing the interest of Germany. Well, I can't remember if he was the one who received or if he was sending out a telegram, but basically Germany is going to offer a secret pledge to Mexico. All right, they tell Mexico, say, look, if the United States joins the war against us, all right, we will give you soldiers and help support an effort by your country to go in and invade the United States, and we will help you regain your territories that you had lost to the United States. Areas like California, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada. Okay, so our neighbor who had no intention of invading the U.S., but another country says, hey, if they join the war, we will help you invade them. All right. That is enough of a threat for us to realize that there is no turning back. And in April of 1917, the United States will declare war against Germany, and we have now joined World War I. So it's about 3 years after the war started until we finally actually joined. Okay, I'm sure you've seen the joke of United States, back-to-back World War champs. We help a lot in World War One, but we were barely in it. Okay, we're just a big turnaround. Okay, and so that's why though our joining is so important. Okay, so Soviet Union about the same time has withdrawn from the war because of their Russian Civil War. We'll talk about that in I think next week. But the war had been dragging on, okay? Instead of it becoming who's got the better strategy, whose arms are better, it's a battle or a war of attrition. All right, who can go the longest without running out of supplies? All right, who can stay in the trenches, keep the soldiers fed, keep getting new soldiers, all right, keep from running out of ammunition before the other side does that. That's what it's turned into. The United States has no interest in doing that, okay? So our soldiers, all right, the American soldiers in the war are called the Doughboys. All right, and the leader of American troops in Europe is General John J. Pershing. Now, us joining is kind of like a big kind of jolt of energy to the Allies, all right, which is needed because at the time most of Europe was starting to suffer from a famine, okay, because the war was slowing down productivity so much, especially in farming and all that. People were running out of food. If you didn't have enough land to grow crops because they became battlefields. All right, and also a lot of your food is now being sent to feed the soldiers because without them you're going to lose. All right, so you get famine conditions popping up all across Europe, especially more Central Eastern Europe is where it's worse. Okay, but we kind of provide that extra jolt of energy that was needed. Our arrival is going to help save Paris from being captured by Germany. But we also, our big thing is we're going to go on the offensive. Okay, we don't want to resort to relying on the trenches. We'd had a little incident with Mexico not long before we joined the war, and so our soldiers have been trained in open field, active moving combat. That's what we want to do. Okay, and so we kind of help break through those lines, and it speeds up the process of gaining territory. We also are going to use something called the convoy system, all right, to help minimize the impact of U-boats, because any American soldiers that are being sent to go fight in Europe have got to travel across the Atlantic, and we know how dangerous that is. So the convoy system was basically where you had multiple ships kind of sailing in a pack together in different kinds, um, where that would make it tougher for the U-boats to sink the ship that mattered, or even to feel like they had a chance if they sank one of ours, they might turn around and get sunk by us. So it's going to cut in half the losses from U-boat attacks, just the convoy system. There's also something, it's not in your notes, but kind of a new paint style, a little camouflage that we paint on the boats. It kind of looks like zebra stripes or zigzags. They do that though to make it harder for the U-boats to be able to see where the ship was going. Okay, so based on the tilt of the ship and how low or high it was in the water, you would base all that information to go, all right, the ship's going east or it's going west at this speed. And that was how they'd end their torpedo, okay? Because it's not like you just shoot it right away and it's there. You've got to anticipate where it's going. Well, these little zigzag paint designs, and there should be some pictures in your notes, made it near impossible to tell which direction or even how fast the ship was heading, and therefore they might still try to fire a torpedo, but the chances of hitting were a whole lot less likely. We also are going to set off mines in the North Sea. So we start placing these mines. If you've ever seen Finding Nemo, you know the balloons that they have with that party with the sharks. Okay, those are sea mines. The Navy places those there so as the U-boats are sailing underwater, they run into one, kaboom, they're over with. So that's the big impact of the United States of America. So we joined, and then by November that same year, we mentioned Russia drops out. They're going to sign their own treaty with Germany. Okay, it's called the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, and what it does is pretty much all of that good land in Western Europe, they're going to give away to Germany. Okay, areas there now today: Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, areas that today make up Poland. All that Western land they give up to Germany. Okay, so look, we lost to you because we're leaving now while you're still fighting. Here you go. All right. So Germany thinks they had already made peace with Russia. They're in a good standing. Then there's the German Spring Offensive. Okay, so now that Russia's out of the war, Germany tries to focus on penetrating the Allied lines. They can take all their soldiers, and they're no longer fighting east and west. Okay, they got to focus on the west. They try to penetrate through the Allied lines. Okay, so it's kind of this last charge to try to break through. They're not able to succeed though. Their lines get divided and split up, so they've got to turn back around without risking getting caught in a trap. So we kind of turn around then and do the same thing, all right? It's called the 100 Days Offensive. It's a 4-month-long Allied campaign to try to push back and eventually enter into Germany. It starts with the Battle of Amiens in August of 1918. All right, so about a month after the German Spring Offensive ends, we turn around and do the same thing. Now, while we're trying to push back the Germans in Europe, okay, down in Egypt, you've got the Battle of Megiddo, all right, at least in the what is today around Israel. But the Egyptians, because they're a British colony, they're fighting, all right, are able to defeat the Ottomans there, and that battle leads to the Ottoman Empire surrender and drop out of the war, thanks to the Egyptians. Then German surrender finally happens with the Battle of Meuse-Argonne, and that battle officially ends the war. Now we'll talk about in the next video the actual 11-11-11 surrender, but by November Germany has actually surrendered and the war is over. So that final battle, World War I with Germany, is the Battle of Meuse-Argonne. Well, it's been a big focus on Europe, okay? But there are a couple of important things that happen in the Middle East, and they really need to be highlighted because of how involved we are, the West is, with the Middle East today. So the Ottoman Empire was still the kings of that area, okay? They're still the reigning power, but they'd been getting weaker and weaker. And we had told you back in the beginning there were two ethnic groups that made up the Ottoman Empire, Arabs and Turks. Well, those two ethnic groups did not get along. The Arabs were in the more African, northeast African area where Israel and the Holy Lands are. The Ottoman Turks were in that Anatolian Peninsula where modern-day Turkey is. And while the Ottoman Empire favored and sided with the Ottoman Turks, they did not really give the Arabs what they want. So Great Britain and France are going to encourage these Arabs to revolt. Now, to help lead this revolt, the British send over to the Middle East a man known as T.E. Lawrence. Okay, you probably know him better by his nickname, Lawrence of Arabia. All right, a famous book and then a movie has been written and made about his exploits. But Lawrence of Arabia is going to be kind of that bridge between the Middle East and the Arab rebels and the British back home. Okay, so he kind of helps unify that movement, give it some direction, but he also, to make that happen, has got to learn and become familiar with the people over there. Okay, what are their wants and desires? Why are they fighting? Yeah, you're going to rebel to take out the Ottoman Empire, but what do you actually want to come from that? So he plays a big role in getting these two different sides to work together. And now that the war is over, the Arabs believe they should be rewarded somehow, okay, that they should have their independence. And Lawrence of Arabia believed the same way. Well, the British and French really don't care as much about that, okay, because that leads you to the Sykes-Picot Agreement. So what the Sykes-Picot Agreement does, and I think it's one of the biggest mistakes of all of World War I, even worse than some of the mistakes of the Treaty of Versailles, okay, is it divides the territories of Arabia, which is today Saudi Arabia, Israel, Jordan, all that, divides that land up between France and Great Britain. And there's really no strategy behind it. They really just draw a line between it into four quarters. One is fully French control, one is fully British, the other is partial control for the others. They're completely ignoring the natural religious and ethnic boundary lines that had historically been in that area. Now, T. Lawrence had actually proposed given his own proposal on the best way to divide up that land. Okay, this is where the Iraqis should have land. This is where the Arabs should be. This is where the Iranians should rule. Okay, and so, like I said, he based it off of the historical religious divisions, but also the ethnic makeup of that. Okay, people that are going to get along together well should be grouped up with each other. This is who has always controlled the land. So Lawrence had put in a lot of thought. He had worked with the Arabians to make that happen, but but that is completely ignored by the British and French. Okay, well, the Arab nationalists are very livid about that, and pretty much ever since then, you kind of see instances of people from the Middle East and having resentment towards Western nations and the United States. So that's not the only reason, but to me, a lot of that stems from the Sykes-Picot Agreement. So that's with the Ottomans, okay? But one other thing that doesn't get focused on enough from World War I is the Armenian Genocide in 1915. So this once again deals with the Ottoman Empire. So the Armenians, they were a Christian ethnic group that was located in the Middle East, okay, in the area that is today modern Turkey and parts of southwestern Russia. Okay, so most of that land is Muslim. This group was Christian, and they were their own little ethnic group. So what the Ottomans decided to do, though, during the wars, they used the war as an excuse to try to purge all non-Muslims from the Ottoman Empire. Okay, so anyone who did not adhere to their religion, all right, they're going to eliminate them. Okay, the main group that they're referring to is the Armenians. Okay, so through their efforts, all right, about 75% of all Ottoman Armenians get killed. Now, a lot of them try to escape to Russia, and some of them are able to successfully seek shelter there. And eventually now they have their own country nearby, Georgia, present-day Georgia, and that's a country in Europe called Armenia. But a lot of them try to come to the United States and are turned away. Okay, so a lot of them who are trying to seek safety and shelter during this and refuge get rejected because no one else wanted their groups. Okay, so like I said, 3/4 of this entire group get murdered. Okay, a lot of it was done through death marches, burned, or even one of the worst ways is drownings. They take them out in the middle of lakes and drop them off there further than it was that you could humanly swim to safety. Well, after the war, all the other leading nations do nothing to the Ottoman Empire. Okay, the Ottomans face absolutely no repercussions, and even today, Turkey, which the Ottoman Empire become, still refuses to acknowledge the Armenian genocide as a genocide. They just think, oh yeah, a couple people got killed because it's a war. Even though most modern nations call it that, Turkey still refuses to acknowledge it. And I think it's important that y'all are familiar with that and that Armenian genocide is not forgotten. So, for the battles of the war, that is it. Okay, our next video should be in a day or two. It's going to talk about the surrender of the war and then kind of what do we do in response to the end of World War I. All right, so stay tuned for that. Also, if any of you are interested in doing that Treaty of Versailles activity, let me know. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Once everyone signs up, we'll figure out a time to do it and how to best divide it. So that's all I got. All right, if y'all have questions, comment, email, or remind, and y'all take care.